to stuff it all in. Will it fit? Yes, it will. So I'm going to have to go in that way. Alright, what I have found is, I think, an old tyre iron. For the good old days when you could change your own tyres, people knew how to do that on the side of the road in the pouring rain. Right, and I will, like I say, I'll put on there that it was restuffed to save the next poor bastard from going through all this only to find didn't need to. And now, put it all back together. There we go. So now comes the fun bit. Put it all back together. Right, so they're all twisted, that's nice and firmly fitted. Can I remember where everything went? Can't remember where this went for a start. So that's my earth lug with the actual earth wire coming out of it. Done. This back earth here is going to be a pain. We've got this wire here. Guessing that one goes over a saddle, so it shouldn't be anywhere near these two wires. So I need to be careful to keep this one down low. like those little bent head pliers, but they don't have serrations, which sometimes is handy, but when you try and move wires around it's not. Okay, that's all those on. This ain't pretty, but then the construction of the set's not that pretty. It's not designed to be pretty. It's designed to be clever and fast. And I'm sure it was those things. Right, so I need to get this wire back under there. This was our earth wire that I think is supposed to go under that screw head. Get the earth wire back on. It's not really on. That is. And we'll look at how we get that on there in a minute. This is a 0.05. Place that while we're here. Pigtail people rejoice. Alright, when you're pigtailing onto these old wires, well, any kind of connection onto these old wires really, you need to make sure the wire's at least solderable, and a lot of times it won't be. So give them a bit of a scrub, and then make sure they'll take solder before you bother trying to do the pigtails, otherwise you're going to put way too much heat into these little poly caps, and they don't like heat. That's one thing that paper and foil could probably handle the heat a little bit better. But these are plastic film, a very thin plastic film. So they just don't like the heat. So like I said, get yourself prepared first, make sure the wire will take solder. That's that. Now you'll notice that's pretty close to that screw head, so move that. Actually you might not notice it, I don't know what you can see in the camera and what you can't. that is out of the way. Alright, the other one's going to go across here, so I'll get that body sitting so that it's across that other wire. Tack that into there for the moment, so I can get it lined up on this end. That's the two caps done. And there we go. There's a lesson in that for all of us. Carbon resistors are carbon resistors. And they're not super strong. And also, that's actually broken the socket. Oh dear. That's quite a bit of rust. You can see that socket in there, corrosion or rust on the actual tab, which has broken off. Now I'll double check that that's not just a junction pin that's used there, but I don't think it is. That is pin 7. That is the cathode. We do need it. So at this point I've got few options, because I won't have a socket like that, which looks like it's designed to be a through chassis socket, not a rivet-in one. So I can try drilling that out and dropping a bit of wire down and then filling it with solder. I could drill it out and run a wire up the side of the pin, or I can part out the other chassis. Bugger, yeah, I don't want to part out the other chassis because it's probably a runner. So if I start pulling it apart, I make it much harder for someone else to rebuild that one. So I think we'll just try a repair first. But we might need a coffee before we do that. So this seems like a good place to pause the video. I shall return. Okay, so had a coffee break, had a bit of a think about it, and it dawned on me that not all the pins on this socket are being used. Here's one which is not being used, so I thought I'd see if I can extract that pin. I've extracted the broken one. I'd extract that socket rather, and if I can, push that out through and then feed it into where the broken one was, I can just re-terminate that. So that's my plan at this particular point, is to recycle an unused pin. But I'm thinking at this point I should be able to get that out without too much hassle. Wishful thinking probably, but there we go. That's released whatever was holding it. And that is as good as gold, and more importantly it is as good as it's going to get. So that solved that problem of pin 7. That is a 470 ohm resistor. This was a 500 ohm resistor, so 470 is near enough. It's within 10%. Make sure that's sitting up off the wire so it's not heating anything up unduly. Since now we're out of the rectifier into the first cap to ground. Then we go down this wire through the second resistor to the second cap, and the second cap to ground, and then out of there is that point there, which is our main HT feed to the radio. So this is where all these wires need to go back on. I don't really like this method of construction. Everything's basically being held by the mechanical strength of the solder, which despite what people will tell you is adequate. Now, I have done a high reliability hand soldering course in the Air Force many years ago. My instructor for that would have a conniption. You heard me saying what I just said, I'm sure. Okay, I'm going to give this a quick visual inspection, but despite how ugly it is, I think it's done. So, do I need to feed this through anything in the case? I don't think I do. It clamps down to the case, so cord feeds in from this side and then back up through. Look at that, perfect fit. Last remnants of that horrible Chinese cord, which I have since chopped up into pieces, broken all the pins off the plug, and had a ceremonial burial at sea. Okay, that's in place. Happy with that. I'm going to put slightly longer aerial on this just because we live out in the countryside, and why wouldn't you while you could? Alright. Okay, at this point, I think we're ready to test. So when I turn this on, this is definitely switched off, so we might have a crook switch. We're via bulb, turning on, and I don't know how well that showed up, but we did just get a slight glow, which tells me something is in circuit. And in fact, interesting. Right, so the power switch is crooked.
The breakers have been without Corey Webster, who will make just.
And
at this point, we have a crook on-off switch. But other than that, we should be pretty solid reliable now. So the next thing I'll do is I need to sort out that on-off switch. Worst case, I believe I've got a spare one. Hopefully it's a 2-pole, not a single pole switch. So I can put a new one in there. And I'm going to go and clean the cabinet, clean the knobs, put it all together, and call it done. Alright. Ta-da! Box of parts. Alright, let's see what value this is. $460K, volume control, 500K, good enough for the girls I go out with. What I need to do at this point is get these wires back into place. remember this. Sigh. Okay, that's good. So that's fixed that. We now have an on-off switch. Okay, so I've polished the cabinet a little bit. Managed to clean up the top. It's got a much nicer gloss to it. So I've gone over that with some medium cut and polish, which has brought that up really well. Given the front a wee bit of a clean up, and there's still a wee bit to do there. It's not ideal. And one of the things is that this Pacemaker logo was obviously fully painted. It's lost some paint on the top, so I'm going to probably put some very fine wet and dry on a flat block and just take that paint off the top of the lettering. That's going to be easier than trying to put paint back on, and it'll make it look uniform, and I think it'll look fine and right like that. So I've also taken this dial out, and I've taken the dial out of the other one and scanned them both, and from one I've got from both of them I've got enough information that I can actually build one if I need to, but for now I'll just use the better of the dials in this cabinet. Like I said, it's not a restoration, it's a repair, so I'll get it looking as good as I can. Now the other interesting thing I discovered, and I'd completely forgotten I had it, which is probably a warning sign that you have too many radios. I actually have a blue one of these with the black cabinet and the blue front. I don't recall when I bought it, but I found it whilst browsing through one of my sets of shelves last night for something completely unrelated, and that's an actually really good nick. So cabinet wise, so what I discovered was that yes, there should be 4 stakes here, and there are these 4 stakes here. Now I'm wondering if the original cabinets only had 4 stakes, and that one of these sets of stakes, maybe these pillars with the extra stakes, are additional, because from memory of looking at it, and I'll have to actually get it out properly and have a good look, I think there was the little spring clips that I imagined were on there on these 4 stakes and these 4 stakes. So it had 8 of them holding the speaker in. So yeah, I suspect that perhaps these were an afterthought, because the original 4 just weren't going to be strong enough. So that was interesting. I don't know if I've got any of those spring clips or an old cabinet that might have them in it. Unfortunately, I know there are some at the Vintage Radio Club Rooms in an old smashed Philips set that I probably could have grabbed the other night when I was there, but the other night when I was there I wasn't really thinking about this, so I'll have a look around, see if I've got some. If not, at least I know where I can get some. The alternative is to just try and find a nut that I can thread onto there and force a thread on. I just don't know how these little pegs would hold up to that kind of torsion. And there we go. So is it perfect? No, it's most definitely not. Is it secure? Well, ish. Is it the right solution for now? Absolutely. That's what I'm going with. It's not perfect, and if I was doing it for someone else, I would absolutely find a better way. Like I said, I believe Philips sets like the, I want to say 210, 208, 208 post-war 4-valve broadcast set. I can picture it in my mind, and I know that the speaker is staked onto the back with at least 4 of the sort of springy clips that I think this actually needs. This will do, and then if I can get those, I can easily take it apart and put that on anyway. So for now, I have the speaker mounted. I'm going to go with that. It's not perfect, the speaker's not in perfect condition, but it works and it will be fine for now. So I will start reassembling everything else, and hopefully the next time you see this it will be going. The next time will be now.
Union. An explosion and fire in the number 4 reactor sent radioactivity into the atmosphere, and according to the official internationally